We are joined this morning by Herman Manyora, who joins us now in the studio. He's a political analyst. Herman, good morning.
Good morning, sure, Eric.
Mambo namna gani?
Mambo nzuri kabisa.
Yeah. Had a good Easter.
Well, yes.
Well, yes. Eh?
Easter ilisha bwana.
Eh?
Easter hasn't come to an end.
Easter ilisha jana.
It did not end yesterday.
Leo ni bakshishi.
If it ended yesterday, we wouldn't have a holiday today.
So Easter goes on.
Yes.
Easter continues.
And for some people, it extends to Wednesday.
Okay. Or the entire week, like
Yes.
Ndu.
Like Ndu.
Ndu is having a whole week of Easter. All right. Herman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're having a mature conversation today. The headline in the Business Daily, isn't it? Herman, here it is.
Over 82% of retirees back to work amid high... What do you mean? Back to work?
Amid high inflation.
What does that mean?
So here you are.
Oh, I'm back.
What he means, Herman, is here we are.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, you guys are.
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
People over 60
Is it official going back to their stations or looking for other jobs?
looking for jobs,
Oh, okay.
seeking employment.
Ilikuwa ya rungu. After retiring, you become a watchman. But I've been telling people, it's not possible. You know why? This
not possible to
is
do
so
it.
complicated. Life is so fast. People of my age, you can't survive in Nairobi. I'm telling you. Nobody will chase anybody from Nairobi. You will just go. Even the roads are so complicated. Unless you are a rich man, to have people chauffeuring you around and errands. You know, to run errands in Nairobi, you go, you are the only old man, even in a matatu. It's difficult. Hakuna hapa rungu. Tutaenda nyumbani.
Mtaenda.
Tutaenda.
Hamtaambiwa na mtu.
No, nobody can chase you from Nairobi. No.
Utapima, utaona, utajua. Let me go when we are in
Life
larger
is too
numbers.
fast, Eric.
Yes.
Life in Nairobi is too fast.
But don't worry, you're just a few of you, only 870,000 people
Only.
above 60 years.
We are few then.
Yeah, in a country of 50 million.
We are nothing.
53 million according to some figures.
You can stay in Nairobi.
We can, eh?
Yeah.
You'll take care of us.
Yeah. Shapatia kazi once in a while. Herman, we've seen what's happened over the weekend.
Yes.
The whole conversation has just been on delayed salaries for civil servants. There had been some warning signals here and there. People who understood matters of public finance would say, we're heading towards this particular point. Now, here we are. The National Treasury is saying, in fact, brace yourself for worse times, because that's what CS Professor Njuguna Ndongo is saying. We are having a cash crunch. We have high debt obligations to pay, and our sources of revenue are dwindling. In terms of, we are able to collect, KRA is able to collect, yes, but when you go to the market to get money, we are not able to get money that we want in the market. So our headroom for debt is also reducing. What do you make of this situation?
There's so much you can talk about these salary delays and cash crunch and all the things people are talking about, including experts. But a number of things come to mind. Let me just, one, it proves Gachagua was wrong when he said they didn't find money, because they are saying money you collect and use, which is how governments work. Now I think they are coming to terms. The reality is that you collect and use. So they could not have found money. What was it? What could it have been doing? Now they know it is true that you can't find money there. Secondly, and much more serious, if I want to run for president in 2027, and I could want to run, I must have a fairly good idea of what I'm going into, what I'm getting into. You cannot be a serious presidential candidate and fail to know the state of the country, the state of the nation in terms of the economy, in terms of the politics, and many other issues. So you cannot get to State House and begin saying you are learning that the country is broke. Then you are not fit to be president. But again, another problem here is the economics that the Kenya Kwanza team with David India and the rest, I told them, you don't seem to understand this country. I think they have a fairly weak understanding of the country in matters of economy. And if they continue lamenting before facing the challenges square, we will get into big trouble. No country has ever gotten to this point and walked out of it smiling. If you allow yourself to get to a point where you have issue with the recurrent expenditure, then you are staring trouble in the face. Recurrent expenditure. The moment the government begins to borrow to pay salaries, we are gone. And it was always coming. By the time Kenya Kwanza was taking over a year or so before, we were already spending about 50-60% of our revenue on debts. Who couldn't know that was a problem? That was already a problem. Because by the time you top up debts and then you add on the share due to counties, you're already almost exhausting your collection before you pay public. So are they getting to know it today? You needed to go into government with a clear idea of what you are going to do about the state of the economy. They talked about debts. Now they are talking as if they never talked about debt. They told us debts were bad. They could not borrow again. But now I think they are borrowing at an alarming only that people are not quite willing to give them. But just so in short, I want to say that government should begin getting serious. That's what this government should just get serious. Get serious.
It's a very simple thing and easy.
Just get serious.
Get serious, boy.
Yeah,
get serious and do what?
And do what needs to be done,
Which is
make money and get money and pay people salaries and do what you get serious. Government is not serious.
No, Herman. Get serious and do what?
Ask me if you are to go to State House as a technical advisor to the president and he's supposed to listen to you, what will you tell him? I'll tell him get serious. That's all. Just get serious. Wake up one day and get serious. And everything will be okay. Just get serious.
I think they're serious.
Yeah.
I think they're serious.
No, get serious. They're not serious.
I think they are, and I'm going to explain to you why I think they're serious.
Go ahead.
They're serious about talking about the things we need to do.
Serious about talking?
About the things we need to do.
Okay.
They talk about it a great deal.
Okay.
Every problem that is raised is talked about.
Yes.
The solutions that are possible are talked about. But that's how you start by solving it. You talk about it, and then we see the solution. But we have a case where there's been a lot of talk, and the solution we talk about, one doesn't see it coming to fruition. I have a kind eye when it comes to talk about this government for one simple reason. They didn't invent inflation. They did not invent the war in Ukraine. They did not invent drought. These are things that came about. COVID was not their invention. But where you are right is that these things were before them. They knew about it. Now, the decision to get into government and assume that what you are going to do to revive the so-called economy is to talk about spending and to spend. Now, that's the conversation, but it's a false conversation. Our biggest problem is never the planning that we have or the money that we're supposed to spend. It's how that money is used. Because if that money is used in the manner that is prescribed, then we'll see the benefits of it. But you talk of huge budgets allocated to situations and places. Was it not the other day we were talking about stadia? That monies were allocated, and at every stage you'll find some, it was just the earth as God created it, with the poster telling you there's going to be a stadia here. Money has been extended. Nothing has been done.
And the cows grazing there.
Some even cows can't graze. Cows are smarter. they know this would not be a good place to graze. I am simply saying that if you follow that trajectory,
yes,
they have, since this government came into power, and following on some of the cases we have with the previous government, we have very many projects for which money was expended, but it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Now, if that money was borrowed for those very projects,
yes,
we owe the money, but there is no project. And had those projects been in place, then some of the economic benefits that we spoke of, we might have been realizing it now. When you hear, for instance, of a government going to Zambia to try and grow corn on 40,000 acres, whereas
Galana Kulalu,
1.7 million acres sitting. We were supposed to utilize 200,000 acres for growing maize. That was not done. So you have to ask.
It was 1 million, then downscaled to 500,000.
Yes. You see, the downscaling is in a piece of paper.
Then we managed 10.
The land is still
the
1
land
million.
didn't
go
acres.
anywhere. The land is still 1.7 million. So all I'm saying is The conversations we have and the things that we actually do are diametrically opposed.
That's why you are supporting me that the government is not serious.
I said they're serious with the talking.
So I want to ask you two gentlemen.
Yes.
And starting with you, CT. What should the government do today?
The government, if I'm to borrow, not being an expert in financial matters, I will borrow from what I've seen work. When President Kibaki came into power, the first thing he did, he stopped all major projects. Stopped, meaning we are not expending money on projects. These new projects we're going to build, no. Let's get our debt collection in order. Let us understand where we are financially. Then thereafter, we can start spending. That's what he did. So by the time he started spending, you could argue he had a fairly clear idea of where he wanted to spend and what he wanted to spend on. But when you come in spending against a backdrop of what we hear the deputy president saying more than anybody else, problems which existed when he was in parliament, and we didn't hear him squeak even once against it. And now suddenly, these are the problems that we are saying we have, and yet many of them are simple carryover. I'm arguing, and this one I have to agree with my brother Herman here. Either they got into this thing without fully comprehending what it took, or they got into it with a completely different agenda from what they were saying. And those two agendas have clashed.
So we're at a point now where KRA, by the way, is not saying that they're not able to raise the money, all right? The KRA chairman, Anthony Manyora, has recently only said, in fact, in terms of hitting revenue targets, they have been hitting, scoring some very good scores in terms of revenue targets. Was it the February where they were at 90-something% of what they were supposed to? Yeah, last month we achieved 98% target, collected 172 billion shillings against a target of 173 billion. That means that they were not doing so badly. We'll achieve this month's target and surpass the 250 billion shillings target by June. The annual target is 2.27 trillion shillings, and KRA is confident that they will be able to.
When he says target, what does he mean?
This is how much they were supposed to. With the annual target of 2.27 trillion, then it's broken down monthly.
Okay.
In the month of February, there was targeting to collect 173 billion shillings. They collected 172 billion shillings.
So is this tied in with the expenditure that they have, so that this collection should also meet what it is they expect to spend money on?
This is tied from the target that they've been given by the National Treasury.
Okay. So
the National Treasury went to Parliament and said, we'd like to spend 3.2 trillion shillings. Our revenue targets are 2.2 trillion shillings. All right? And that is the target that's given to KRA.
Okay.
So KRA works with that.
See, the reason why I'm asking the question is because when we talk about MPs not being paid a salary, we think it's a hot conversation. It is not. Counties have not received money December, January, February, March, which means people who work within the county system have not been paid.
Yep.
And there's the question about what about those who work in the offices of the MPs and people who work in some auxiliary services? Have they also been paid? And is it just 1 month or is it many months before? This story of people not receiving money, it's a huge. So when I ask about the target that they had, what is that target for? You've collected it. Okay, what are you going to use it for? We know we are paying debts. Did we not know that these debts were due? We knew.
Of course.
It's been the papers. We knew even the very day they were going to be. Were they not planned for?
Of course.
So, if you knew and you didn't plan for it, then what are you telling us about yourself? How are we supposed to look at you? How are we supposed to see you?
This is now where the National Treasury comes and answers those questions.
Treasury.
Yep.
Well, our boss of Treasury has told us what we already know, that we are having hard times. We know we're having hard times. Why is he telling us things that
because these things were due at this time?
We know we're having a hard time. We've known for some time. We keep knowing this thing. So when you tell us tighten your belts, the story of tightening our belts began last year. We've been told to tighten our belts to the point where now you wonder whether you should actually just get on new trousers instead of tightening your belt.
Have you redefined what belt means?
Yes.
Come up with a new definition for belts. You know, when I hear all these conversations, and then the one that I actually, take great exception to is what the Deputy President said yesterday. Because the Deputy President is like a stark record. He is on that issue of handshake and what we inherited. Handshake came in, they borrowed a lot of money, they spent willy-nilly, they had no checks and balances, and now this is the reason why we're here. And I look back and ask myself, who is it that was supposed to check what the handshake was doing? It's members of parliament. Handshake was not between PNU and or Jubilee and ODM. It was between Uhuru and Raila. Members of parliament who are in parliament and earning a salary were supposed to be the ones who were doing this oversight. What oversight did Rigathi Gachagua offer while in parliament? What oversight did the current leader of minority of Pure and I offer while in parliament? What oversight did Moses Kuria, who is now in the cabinet, offer? Or Alice Wahome? Or Eden Duale? What oversight did they offer when they were in parliament? Now they can come and tell us, those guys are the ones who messed up there. Messed up what?
But they haven't even identified the mess.
They don't even know what the mess is.
Yes.
They just know they borrowed a lot, and that's why now, any new shilling that comes is going to paying debt.
I think this job is too big for some of these guys. When I say they should get serious, I'm dead serious. Just get serious. If you want to sort out things in this country, you get serious. If you get serious, what do? You assess the situation in the country and it's a serious situation. So you play the politics right. You cool the temperatures. You do not fan the temperatures and make things worse by using foul language against your opponents and taking Kenyans back to elections, and they have given you power. But more importantly, you get serious by putting a team in place. When the president put up the current team, I said this will be his undoing. Because the president is a very capable leader. There's no doubt about that. The president is hardworking, he's focused, and he's very intelligent. No doubt about that. But you see, there's just so much an individual can do, and that's how a team comes in. So if you do not form a cabinet of people who can help you, you end up doing the job yourself. And I said this many times. I said the president will get to a point where he will realize he needed ministers, because he's playing the game as if the way I was taught when I was being taught how to drive. The instructor told me there will never be a day when the road will be cleared for you to drive alone. So the president is informing his cabinet of people who was behaving as if things will be so well in the country, he will be running government himself. But I pointed out to him, my friend, you'll be forced into politics at some point. And now he's forced into politics. Attending to politics means he has no time to run government. No time to run government in a situation where you have no team
to run government.
Because you thought you would do it yourself. I have no doubt in my mind, informing his cabinet, the president had no intention whatsoever that these are people who can run government for him. I mean, the president is an intelligent man. Looking at these people, he knows they can't help you run government. So what was he saying? He will do it himself. But he didn't know the road would not be cleared for him to drive alone. Raila will come with the politics. The moment you turn away from economics, from running government,
from running day-to-day running
to go into politics, the economics will suffer, and that's why we are where we are. So the starting point for the president is to be serious. To be serious means he must face this politics in a serious way, not the way they are facing it. This is a political crisis, whether you like it or not. So you face it knowing this thing will consume your time. Even if it doesn't take the country down. I've been running a hashtag, this country is too good to go down. Even if Raila doesn't go to that far to take the country down, your time will be spent on this thing and you'll have no time for anything else. That's already bad enough. So you play the politics right so that you have time to attend to the economics of the country. But even then again, you still can't do it alone. You need a team.
So when he's handling this politics, as you say, he should be serious and handle the politics. What should he do?
Just to accept that things are not well in the country.
So handshake with
Raila. A national conversation. We need a national conversation. We need a national charter. Whether we get it today or not, The truth is we need a national charter.
He says he's already called one.
That is, you can see both sides are not serious. They have to be serious. We need a national conversation.
So
Kenyans must sit down and talk.
If we go
Don't
into
ask
that
me
national
what they
conversation,
will talk about.
if we go into this national conversation, whatever form it takes, how does that address these issues?
We have a problem in the country. And we must talk about it. Elections have failed us. Democracy is not working. And unless you set the politics right, nothing else will work. Look, which month is this after election? We had election in August 9th. We are almost on the 8th month. Have we left politics?
Nope.
Does it look like we are leaving it tomorrow?
No.
When is the next election?
2027.
Assuming at the best case scenario, we end up these shenanigans by the end of the year or early next year. When do we start the next election? 2025? So how can you be working 1.5 years or 2 years at most in every 5 year cycle and hope to develop the country? So the politics is not right. We must bite the bullet, sit down as a people and say, so far the infrastructure we have put in place is not served us since in 1963. We must re-examine, do what we can do now and continue improving on it. But if we behave like the proverbial ostrich with the head in the sand, this country will burn one day.
Let's take
And
a
that day
break.
is not very far according to me, and I fear.
Let's take a break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Herman, you're saying that we need to address the political situation that we have.
Yes.
And you're calling it a national dialogue.
Yes.
What, in your opinion, should this national dialogue look like?
Just to ask ourselves, why are we where we are? What is the problem? And answers will be found, so long as you get the right people to sit down and look for the answers. Why are we where we are? This many years after independence, we are still behaving, we are seeing the lives of poor people of 19th century. Why the challenges we identified still there with us? The challenges were so clear: ignorance, poverty, and disease. We are almost worse than we were when I was a kid, and Muga here will attest to that. You just walked into the hospital and got treated and went home.
Treated and got medication.
And nobody ever asked you for anything. We went to school, we got books. So there's a way in which we are reversing. So that's the beginning point. Why are we so poor? Why are we still a dirty, poor third world country instead of being a first world country? And the answer is simple.
What's the answer?
The politics is wrong. We got our politics wrong.
Didn't we try and fix that problem?
We didn't.
With the
We got
2010
lazy people
constitution.
sitting down. We got lazy people and some hecklers in Bomas and other lazy people by way of experts. And whatever little they had achieved was messed by MPs. I don't want to call them what I wanted to call them, but in Naivasha. So what did we end up with?
Okay.
This is not a charter that
Let's go back.
Yes.
When Yashpal Gai went around the country,
Yes.
and he and his team produced that report,
Yes.
do you think that report contained the issues that were affecting Kenya at that point 20 years ago?
To some extent, yes. But even at that point, how much of that did you found its way in the new constitution?
Okay. So the thing is, we were able to have the conversation.
Something.
And we raised the issues.
Some of the issues were there.
And when people went to Bomas, those issues were being talked about.
People talked about
They were
them.
being canvassed.
Yes.
Then what happened? That was now hijacked
Then it
by
was
the political class.
bastardized by the Kilifi draft. It was rescued briefly, and the father bastardized in Naivasha. So what did we end up with?
So our problem then,
Yeah.
as I see you saying it,
Yes.
is our politicians.
Yeah.
We Kenyans know what our issues are.
Correct.
We told Yashpal Gai and his team, including PLO, Lumumba, Keriako, Tobiko, and the others, these are our issues.
Yes.
They brought those issues to Bomas. And people agreed that these are the issues
Yes.
until the politicians came in. And politicians at that point started arguing about,
This and
MOU,
the other.
this and the other.
Rubbishing what
bastardized
people
it.
had done over a long period of time, and spend energy and time discussing at Bomas and so.
So Kilifi went, and Kilifi was defeated by the people.
Yeah.
And then what happened again?
What we brought actually was some hybrid that wasn't the best. That compromise in Naivasha was the worst. But even then, it's a question of You see, let me tell you about being serious. And this is what will bring this country down. We are never serious about anything. Laziness is our trademark. When you ask Kenyans to sit down and discuss something like the Constitution, they will bring, first of all, the people they will bring on board are just people who don't have the capacity for that kind of job. And therefore, what do you expect from people who don't have the capacity? Look at Kenyans when they are told an election can take you down as a country. It has done to other countries. Therefore, it's a serious thing. Choose serious people. What do you see at the end of when you are told this is a commissioner? You ask yourself, do we know these people can bring the country down? Look, it is the best we can have. So, the problem begins even with the selection of the people to sit in those forums. Then the politicians take advantage of the weak people there, and then they mess everything. So if we have a national conversation, we must begin by saying, number one, we need to figure out how to identify Kenyans who can work on a constitution for us. It's not just about anybody. Oh, this representation, Muluya,
you want another constitution? You want another constitution?
It's not a question of a constitution. It's a question of what is the problem in this country. Answers will be found. We must seek answers as to why we are as poor as we are. Why this country is still a poor, dirty third world country 60 years later, when we should be a first world country. And the answer I said is politics. So how do we fix our politics?
By moving the politics.
There are certain issues, let me tell you, Eric, there are certain issues which there is always a beginning point in solving a problem. You understand the problem. The problem in this country is about entitlement. Some community believes they are entitled. This sense of entitlement. And I've said it many times. This is what Raila and Uhuru had come to accept. That unless you address the issue of one community later joined by another one, feeling a sense of entitlement, and another community feeling a sense of betrayal and persecution. Our politics has been about Luos and Kikuyus in this country. The Kalenjin wamekuja tu ku beef up kidogo. So if you don't address that issue, that's what Raila and Uhuru were trying to face head on. Can this country belong to all of us? If you don't answer that question, your children will answer it, and they may not answer it on a table. They may answer it somewhere else in a bad way. We have to answer that question. Does this country belong to all of us? Can Eric Latif campaign to be president, win, and we give him the presidency? If you don't answer that question, then it's a waste of time. Can you campaign, win, and we allow you to be president?
Just like that.
It's as simple as that. So you can go around all these issues. The question is, can power leave a certain club and go to an outsider, a non-member of the club? If the answer is no, then this country will one day square it out in a bad way. So the best way is for us to start by saying, let us make it possible for any Kenyan to be president in this country.
How do you do that?
The questions will be answered. I don't have the answers now. We shall have to answer ourselves. What is the problem? Is it the election? Is it the infrastructure? Certainly it's not IBC the way we cheapen it. If it's about election, it must be an entire electoral infrastructure, an ecosystem that can only produce the winner and nobody else. If it goes beyond that, what is the problem? We have to address it. If it's a question of structure, America's addressed it. They realize if we don't take care, 2 states or 3 will gang up and rule America forever. So they addressed it. Moi addressed it in a small way. You remember the 25% in 5 provinces out of the original 8. Mm-hmm. We improved on Moi by saying 50% plus 1. Has it served us? Is it still not possible for Luos to gang up with Kikuyus and rule this country forever? So those are issues you must address. If you don't address them, your children or grandchildren will face each other in some field, and the results will be disastrous for the country. Mm. So this country must accept their demons. Face your demons and address them. The demon in this country is Can any Kenyan become president in this country? The answer is no, for now.
City.
I'd like to append to what Herman is saying. Yes, the discussions around the Khalifi draft of our constitution and then the Naivasha, we always avoid talking about the individuals who stood out in these discussions, because if anything untoward happened, it is them on whose shoulders this thing should fall squarely. Okay? Clearly mistakes were made then. But where we didn't make a mistake was we created what we call a county system, 47 governments. It was supposed to help address the very thing Herman is saying. Now, you've heard me say this before, Eric, that there was a body that was created to try and shepherd this constitutional change. But they were given only 5 years. And I asked the question, were 5 years enough? There was yet another body.
For the Transition Authority.
Yes.
And CIC.
Yes. And he has understood where I'm going with this. Because the Transition Authority, if you look back and understand, one of the biggest problems they had was funding. They were inadequately funded. So if you inadequately fund the one body you've set up to try and shepherd this process so that it follows what was intended.
To midwife devolution.
Yes, so what do you think is going to happen to the devolution? Then you have CIC. It's supposed to help with the legal aspects of this transition. Again, you give it 5 years. A process that's supposed to last for posterity, you give it 5 years. 2 of them, the key. And then you think devolution is going to work. And then you look at the processes that we've seen since. Every little move. And I think where I thank this government is that they, on some of these matters, they do not pretend. They've come out and they do what they say. If they find a law that is inconvenient, they change it. Okay? So when they say that they abide by the rule of law, they are not wrong. If this one exists, they don't like it, change it. And they have the numbers to do so. Now, if indeed devolution worked as it ought to, and it was given the focus, this discussion about the tribal factor, about the classing, the grouping, there are those who keep arguing we devolved it, and in reality, if you look, we did. And the devolution part of it, where it is worse, it brings out the worst in us. Because county governments have become one of the worst den of thieves you could actually come across. The Auditor General's report, year in, year out, lays this thing bare. So, when Herman says we need to have a conversation, yes, we do. But who are we going to have a conversation with? Among whom will the conversation be had? And beyond what we discussed and which brought about what we currently have.
Yeah.
What are we going to have? Because we have the structures, but there are people who are deliberately ensuring they don't work.
So would you say it's the same thing that happened as you talk about that journey towards that constitution? Bombers, there was infiltration of politics and the politicians that scattered that process.
Yes.
We ended up in the 205 referendum that scattered, that finished that whole process. We restarted the journey with the committee of experts. They gave us the harmonized draft. It was taken to Naivasha again. You've said it was stripped.
Actually,
bastardized.
If I may simplify, Derek, it was just simple, pure, selfish interests.
So that's it.
Yes.
So if our politicians, as you've seen, the political class is the one that has been clawing back on the gains of the citizens, then if you have a national conversation, we should start by saying who should not be in that conversation.
Politicians.
Well, how have other people done it over years, ages? If you get what you call a constituent assembly, so that Bomas then gives you the constitution immediately. Yeah. At the end of the day, at the end of that assembly, whether it takes a year
in that constituent assembly,
yes.
If we go with the formula of the constituent assembly and Bomas, all right, all members of parliament were there. All 210 plus 12
So
nominated.
what will we have changed?
But Bomas came up with good ideas.
Hold on.
Yes.
Bomas had some good ideas.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And then the reason why Bomas are scattered is because of the political leadership.
Yes.
Today, we have over 400 members of parliament, National Assembly and Senate.
Yeah.
Take all of them, 450,
yes.
into this constituent assembly. Take 47 governors into this constituent assembly. Take 1,800 MCAs into this constituent assembly. And then you tell me that the rest of us are going to have a voice.
No, that's not how it will be done. We will have to discuss about membership, entry point, who gets the ticket to enter there, not just about everybody. Parliament will perhaps be given us just a couple of seats there. If we are serious. And we have to be serious. If we are not serious, this country will go down when we are watching.
You know, Herman, the seriousness you speak of is what shepherded us through those many processes that ended up at Bomas. There was seriousness.
Yes.
Various sectors of this society got serious. Whether it was the religious sector, they were serious. Okay? Whether it was civil society, they were serious.
Unions.
They were serious. I mean, it was taken seriously. And the politicians, those in power and those who were in the opposition, they were serious. But somewhere along the line, we got the constitution, bastardized as it was, and people said we have arrived. And we had not arrived.
I didn't even vote for it.
We had barely begun. I
thought we will be giving ourselves a false start, which is true. Look, this is not a constitution. This is just a joke.
And the constitution is continuously being watered.
If you look at Bomas, it may not be the best, but look at it in terms of devolving power through devolution. We are talking of regions, not these tiny little things we are calling counties. We were talking of original 8 counties, but then we agreed we could expand 8 to maybe 10, 12, maximum 14. Those are viable units, okay? Power would have been diffused.
Viable in what sense?
Viable, even in the simple sense of even economical viable, political viable. You know, a region in Nigeria is a viable unit. States in America are viable units. But if you talk of 47 counties in a small country of 50 million people, what are you talking about? They are neither nor. So that's the first mistake.
But Herman, are we saying that as currently constituted, the counties cannot work?
Are you saying they're not viable?
They are not viable.
Because?
They are not viable units.
Because
they are not viable.
Viable in what sense?
I have told even economic sense.
Politically, they serve a purpose.
A region ought to have the capacity even to generate revenue. Okay? Generate revenue.
At what level? Because they do generate revenue, but is
it
they do.
They call it on-source revenue. How much do they get?
Actually,
do they have the capacity to generate revenue?
I would ask a different question, Herman. I would ask the question, what are they capable of raising and what do they raise? These are two different conversations.
What are they?
Capable of raising.
I think
what is their potential and what do they actually present as having been raised?
I think it's just a question of common sense that if you had the whole of Nyanza region being one political economic unit, it is much more viable from an economic point of view.
I'm not arguing
than
with
if you have Shire. Is it really something to argue about?
I'm not arguing with that. I'm not arguing with that. I'm simply saying that the units as we currently have them,
yes,
I am questioning the viability that you say is non-existent. That's what I'm doing. I'm questioning that.
You don't need to question because it is not there.
The fact that they are mismanaged.
You're saying they're not viable.
Yes.
He's arguing against that.
Yes.
He's saying they are viable.
Yes.
Explain to me how, because I don't see how.
You see, the fact that a constituent geographical area is mismanaged doesn't mean it is not viable. The fact that revenues are collected and what is reported is a far cry from what not only is collected and what could be collected. From the times when we had the local authorities, it was established by many research findings that whatever the local entity was called, then a municipality, they only recorded 1/3, and that was a maximum of what was collected. So what happened to the other 2/3? It's not difficult to figure out.
I think Muga, if you were a kid, I would have beaten you because you have even used the best example.
Yes, I have.
I come from Vihiga County.
Yes.
Before that, it was Kakamega County. Now, you cannot compare the large Kakamega County in terms of viability in whatever sense with the little fragmentation that produced I don't know how many counties.
I now understand why.
How many municipalities, I don't know how many local county councils. Kakamega County Council. Broken letter into Vihiga County Council, Kakamega County Council, Julugari County Council. Finally, Mumias, Butere.
Actually, I know.
You cannot compare even an administrative unit called a district, Kisii district. You cannot compare Kisii as a district, whichever meaning you give to the word viable. And the little things that Kibaki later produced, calling them district, it is a no-brainer, my friend.
Actually, it is not a no-brainer for the simple reason that some of these units, small as they seem, and coming from Vihiga, I can understand where your beef is. I understand fully. It's the same with constituencies.
Yes.
The determining factor usually is population. Over time, there are more people, so representation, for it to make sense, people are given, you hive off a portion. Now, your argument is sometimes you don't need to hive off. You need to keep it as a unit. Yes, politics plays into it, and sometimes it waters down the process. But if you're talking about just a very simple process of self-determination, in my mind, the county system brought that to the fore, meaning, okay, so you are a people. For whatever, however you want to configure it, but you are a people. I am arguing, is it possible for these units as they are right now to be? And I'm saying yes.
They are not.
I am saying yes. They are mismanaged.
Let me give you another example of city.
Yes.
Let me explain in another way. A governor in a country like Nigeria, when he speaks, the country listens. The president listens because he's carrying weight behind him. But when you have 47 little fellows in a country of 50 million people,
this thing is really getting.
Boss.
No, this thing. But he has told us comes from Vihiga. It's a small
so I'm
country.
saying,
Yes.
Bomas was talking of viable regional units. People feared Majimbo. The word Majimbo was frightening people. So that's what scuttled this.
But I also look at it politically, Herman,
Yes.
and think, so let's say that Nyanza was producing one governor.
Yes.
All right. Would there be the national problem that we have, would it be playing out in Nyanza at county level? Where is this governor coming from?
No, of course.
Is the governor coming from South Nyanza, or is he coming from
Those
the
are
other side of
things
Nyanza?
that when I say
is the
Kenyans
governor
will be-
coming from? Is the governor
when I
representing
say-
Kisii, or is he representing
And
Luo,
finally,
or is he
you go down
representing?
even to the finally you go down even to the village. Which village? But that's where the thinking comes in. After the region, looking at our unique situations as Kenyans, can we now change it? Can we look into below the regions? What could we have? Maybe now the current counties. Below that, so it's a question of thinking.
So we'll multi-layer this thing.
Yeah, you could multi-layer it, no problem. And the constitution provides for the same.
But Herman,
Let me read a comment here.
Yes.
Yes, someone says the problem in this country is a bloated civil service. Period. Let's run this country like a business, and we are out of the woods. However, political backlash arising is something no president would have the guts to face. Here in Guinea, national conversation, counties, etc. Ni stories, porojo.
To bloated civil service, we need more people than we have employed so far. We need to give them work.
We need more people.
Yeah, to serve the people of Kenya. We need to employ more people to serve the people of Kenya.
So you're saying actually our
And
civil
I'll give you an
service is
example.
under-resourced.
I'll give you an example. We retrenched post office before it died. There was when it was KPTLC.
They call the golden handshake.
Golden handshake, and we retrenched. Bamba 50.
Bamba 50.
People went home. Later, businessmen came and took over. Safaricom came and everything. Everybody's supposing instead of retrenching people who worked with the post office, we moved into mapping Nairobi and other cities. The way it's done elsewhere, so that your mail comes right to your door. How many more people would they have employed instead of firing? We need to be creative, innovative, and think about this country. Instead of shrinking the workforce, we need to expand the workforce, because we have children coming out for schools, we have young people looking for employment. We cannot talk of retrenching people. We should talk about increasing this workforce, but making them serve the people of this country. Look, if you are in the village and you try to do something small, you realize there's no expert around there in any area. If your car breaks down, hakuna mtu wa kukusaidia. If your water is not working in the house, hakuna plumber. If you want to plant cabbage, you don't know which variety. Extension workers are not there. And you say we have an bloated workforce, we need more civil servants. We need to employ more people, but not in the manner in which counties are doing. I'm back with the counties. But we cannot end this without saying another good thing that came from Bomas was also the structure of government. This must also be addressed. And this national conversation I'm looking at must produce a structure of government that diffuses government so that the president shares that parliament, but that power with a couple
With
other
others.
other Kenyans. You can
Okay.
call them what you want to call them, eh?
Sawa.